Before we really begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm sitting on Bay Miwok land, and no matter where you join us today, you're sitting on stolen land that was built on a legacy of stolen labor. And then next, I'd like to ground us in a bit of joy and why we are here today. So just take a moment, a brief moment, and think of a child in your mind that brings a smile to your face. If you can't think of anyone, you can look at the one in the middle. That's mine 10 years ago when she was very small, or use any of those other faces on this slide. And good evening. My name is Kayesha Nzewi, and I'm the woman in charge at Black Californians United for Early Care and Education, or Black ECE. A year ago, I could not have imagined that we'd be in the position to share time with you all today. A year ago, we didn't have a name or clear vision, but it was exactly nearly a year ago that we decided to make who we are now a reality. Black ECE is an organization that is by and for Black children, Black families, and the Black childcare workforce. In February, we introduced ourselves to you with our 10-point policy framework. We launched our website in June, developed our strategic plan in July, and received our 501c3 nonprofit status in October. We've presented at conferences, convenings, and work groups, and we've had folks wondering how to get involved, how to partner, and how to support. So finally, we can move forward with all of you. When developing our strategic plan, we let go of white supremacist values in every way possible to dream about what California could look like for Black children, families, and the childcare workforce in 2050. Imagine what would need to happen in the next 5 years to bring those dreams to fruition. And finally, define what we will do in the next 24 months to start us off towards those 2050 dreams. In short, we have strategies for changing how Black people are treated in California. While childcare workers in general are dismally paid, Black childcare workers are paid on average 78 cents less than their colleagues. And while the broader issue of pay for the entire field of early care and education needs to be addressed, at Black ECE, we will focus on closing the racial wage gap experienced by Black childcare providers. In our strategic plan, we have prioritized fighting for the elimination of the racial wage gap for Black childcare workforce by providing stipends for California's Black childcare workers to make up that 78 cent per hour wage gap. To do that, we would like to first collect stories from Black childcare workers about their experiences living on the wages they are paid. The stories would be collected by both leaders of Black ECE and current childcare providers. Story collection would serve two distinct purposes. One, to help in our advocacy and present in a legislative briefing to raise the issue among elected and appointed decision makers. The second purpose is to identify and recruit Black childcare workers to become advocates. The legislative briefing will be designed and presented by a few of the emerging leaders. The briefing would culminate in defining our legislative and budget ask to fund ongoing stipends for Black providers to eliminate the racial wage gap. But our work doesn't stop there. We want to recruit and train up to 50 Black childcare providers over the next 2 years to advocate for the elimination of the gap through stipends or any other solution they may develop. Together, we will meet with legislators and the administration to build relationships, because we know this is a long game, and advocate for our cause. We will likely focus on building support among Black caucus members and women's caucus members. We will also support our new advocates in testifying at budget hearings, whether in person or virtually if allowed. We are not naive though, and know that eliminating the racial wage gap will require patience and willingness to continue our efforts indefinitely. We also know that if we don't raise the issue, it will never be solved. While we may not eliminate the racial wage gap in 1 or even 2 years, we definitely want to eliminate it for the providers we engage over the next 2 years. Their participation would include a monthly stipend that covers the 78 cent wage gap. Now, that's a lot to do in just 2 years, but by then, we expect that Black childcare advocates will be heard and prioritized among lawmakers and other decision makers, and they will be prepared and supported to continue lifting their voices. ECE policymaking and resource allocation have primarily excluded the lived experiences of Black Californians. At Black ECE, we intend to disrupt and abolish over 400 years of purposefully designed, institutionalized racism. Our education system was founded on racial hierarchies and social constructs that underserve and underrepresent people of African descent. Thanks to the trailblazing efforts of now Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, but then Assemblywoman Weber authored AB 1321, establishing the task force to study and develop reparations for African Americans. The task force released its draft report this summer, including policy recommendations to remedy the harms experienced by African Americans due to the everlasting legacy of slavery. You can find links to the report in the chat, and you'll see for yourself that it is quite comprehensive and reflects a year of hearings and contributions of experts on the topic. While comprehensive, there's a clear blind spot in the draft report, as there are no specific recommended policies for California's youngest Black children, their families, or Black child care providers. In the short term, we will draft a memo of recommendations to submit to the task force, providing policy recommendations to remedy harms experienced by young Black children, their families, and Black child care workers. Next, we will embark on a long-term campaign to achieve reparations. We plan to develop partnerships with organizations already working in the reparations space and convene a diverse coalition of people and organizations that focus on issues related to young Black children, their families, and caregivers, people who focus on early childhood well-being. Together, we will refine our recommendations and determine our demands based on the coalition's priorities and current landscape, launching a campaign for Black ECE reparations. Now, you've heard a lot from me right now, so I'm really pleased to be joined by co-founder and the woman really in charge of keeping us true to our strategic plan, our Chiefess of Focus, Samantha Thompson, to share the remaining pieces of our strategic plan.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Keisha, for that very pleasant introduction. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight, and I am going to be discussing our fundraising efforts in ways that celebrate Black excellence. So I'm going to be talking about cookouts and family boxes. So at Black ECE, we aim to ensure California's early care and education system is not only culturally responsive, but culturally affirming for Black children, Black families, and Black early educators. While the efforts Keisha just described will help change systems, they will take time to achieve. Our children, our families, and our caregivers, however, cannot wait. We are determined to build community throughout California by creating opportunities for cultural affirmation, political action, and develop ongoing sources of revenue. Ultimately, we want to celebrate the excellence that exists within our culture. And we know that's a lot, but I think you'll enjoy hearing about how we'll make that happen. California has a population of over 2 million Black people, the 5th largest in the nation. But as I'm sure many of you have experienced, we are spread throughout this large state, creating isolating environments for many of our children, families, and caregivers. To alleviate this, we plan to host proverbial and literal cookouts throughout California to bring together Black children, Black families, and the Black child care workforce for events that center Blackness, foster community, and affirm our culture. We will also use these events to build relationships and partnerships with other Black-centered organizations and individuals, and organizations and people who want to support the work of Black Californians United for Early Care and Education. Next, we want families and childcare providers to have easy access to toys, books, and activities that unapologetically affirm Black culture. We are very excited to develop and test next year and launch in February 2024, a yet-to-be-named subscription box that will be curated by Black child development experts to identify and include early learning resources sourced from Black vendors whenever possible. Additionally, the boxes will contain timely informational Black-centered resources, as well as a call to action, updates regarding policies, and data and statistics informed by Black-led solutions that impact Black children, families, and communities towards a path of wholeness and prosperity. The subscription boxes will unapologetically center and affirm a Black whole child, whole family, and whole community approach rooted in Black culture, well-being, healing, and thrivance. Boxes will be able to be purchased by family-serving organizations such as family resource centers or childcare centers, networks or associations to distribute to their families and their communities, or they can be purchased by individuals. And finally, by 2024, we hope to host an annual fundraising gala or other event that allows us to not only raise funds, but celebrate and acknowledge the joy, brilliance, and creativity of our children and the love, commitment, compassion, and tenacity of the adults who care for them. All of these activities will lay a foundation for relationship building with individuals and organizations who want to engage with and support our organization. But let me be clear, we don't plan on doing things the way that we've been trained to do or are used to doing them. That way doesn't work for Black people. In fact, we are training ourselves to press pause when we get stuck trying to do something traditional, leaning heavily into the white supremacist values we've all been raised to embrace, even unintentionally. We know Black ECE isn't for everyone, and we're committed to not trying to be. We want people to come with us, knowing that some will not. After hearing from us today, we hope that you come with us. Before we let you know how you can support our work, we want to hear from you though. So in the chat, or raise your hand if you'd like to be unmuted to speak. Share with us your thoughts, reflections, or questions that you may have about what you've heard today.
Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to learn more about you and experience some of the amazing work that you're doing. It's exciting to me to hear that we are taking unapologetic and assertive actions that support the unique cultural needs of our children in the education system, and a system that has traditionally neglected or even ignored the needs, the cultural needs of our children specifically, and where we are forced to send our children into a system that may be traumatic for them, but if we don't send them, then we can go to jail for that. So it's exciting to hear more. I love the approach, and I'm just excited to see how we can support this work.
I see we have a question in the chat that I'll post to Keisha. How can aligned organizations amplify your message in communities?
That's a great question. And in a few minutes, you'll have a chance to learn how to get involved. Sorry, but as we launch, we're still new. And so we don't have a great social media presence yet, although we have all of the social media accounts. But we didn't want to launch without a social media plan. But one way, obviously, an easy way to amplify is to follow us and to like and share and react to any posts you might see. All of our social media handles are BlackECE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and LinkedIn. And so that would be one way. Another way is in a few minutes, just a minute or two, you will get the chance to sign up to receive our newsletter, which would have announcements of all of those things that would be forthcoming, such as joining the racial wage gap campaign, reparations campaign, and how you can help and get that out to you can utilize those tools to get that out, those messages out to your community.
So any other questions? Does anybody? Thank you, Lamar, for sharing your thoughts. Okay, I see a hand. Pamela, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning. I love everything that I heard, and I'm so excited for the cookouts. I just wanted to ask about since I heard in terms of the story sharing, it's going to be current ECE field providers, but I'm wondering, what about folks who have left the field? Are their stories also going to be something that might be impactful and, worth gathering and sharing too?
The story, the qualifier of current are of folks who would help collect the stories. But the stories can come from anyone who's experienced the wages of a childcare worker, whether they're a family childcare provider, they work in a center or preschool, or they're a family friend or neighbor provider, however they care for children. And then they have to be Black.
Lots of agreement there. Any other? Love your commitment to reparations. Thank you. What does it look like for organizations who want to come with you and join you in unlearning white supremacy values? That's a great question.
That is a great question that I don't know if we have the answer to yet on that part, because we are ourselves unlearning those values. And we're, as my colleagues and I, working really hard to hold ourselves accountable, like Sam said, is that we don't often see it because we're in it and it's so deeply ingrained to our subconscious. And so I think one way is just that willingness to understand it and call it out when we see it, knowing that we are all in it together and we are all willing to say, oh, that was messed up, let me shift. But it's hard. Like, there's no doubt that it's hard. And there's no doubt that we as an organization at Black ECE are willing and, in fact, really excited to help people grow in this way along with us.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I hear you say that. I don't know what immediately comes up in my mind or through my heart is how do I even know the difference between thriving and surviving? It's like, what is it? It's like,
right. I mean,
Right.
that is so true. That is so true. That could be a really good topic for a cookout.
Yeah,
Is
Kaisha,
to help us figure that out.
as Kaisha, as Lamar was saying that, as I'm actually surviving right now from flu symptoms, but I was thinking, when you don't have to take a deep breath and feel like you have to hold it. I mean, it's more a figurative way of thinking about it, but that breath that some of us Black folks take, and we're holding it constantly in our bodies. But when that breath becomes easy, to take an inhale and an exhale, and and there's joy, there's constant joy around you. Not that we don't have it, but there's like these spotlights where they come and go because the labor is so hard. So again, that's something we would have to figure out. But that's what I was thinking about when Lamar just said that. How would we know?
And I'm gonna add that we're thriving because we're here doing this work on this day. And it is our survival that got us to this point. It's our ability as people to continue to thrive amidst those moments of feeling like we're surviving. That is our thriving. So I just, one could look at it as a struggle, and I see it as resilience and perseverance and evolution of who we are as people, and holding true to the values and beliefs that we know are important for our culture, for our families, for our children. I do see a hand, Malcolm Harris. I want to give you an opportunity to speak.
So I just wanted to say thank you all very much for this. As somebody who's been organizing, born and raised in California for years, this is a long overdue conversation. Much appreciation for y'all stepping in and naming this. because and now and I wanted to jump in with Keisha's comment in the beginning, the head woman in charge got me. And just my appreciation for the lightheartedness of the speech too. And for Lamar, appreciation for you naming the layers of what it means to thrive and survive. But all and along with that, I'm curious about how we can be supportive of each other. Again, born and raised California and Black, and just saying Black senators, speaking up on behalf of Black people can get you attacked. I want to also name that. And the layers of what it means to do that, even in our organization. We have had a lot of struggle around, I run a Black-centered campaign, but internal struggles with non-Black folks who only hear Black only. And so how do we, how can we be supportive of each other as Black people who are taking these positions, and much appreciation for this very Black-centered, upfront Black perspective. And just curious too about how, as Black folks in the positions and the places we're in, how we can be supportive of each other in moving these Black-centered visions. And so wanted to name that. I hope that makes sense, but how we can name it and lift it up and be supportive of each other and helping our colleagues, the folks who we work closely with, unlearn the white supremacist systems and way of operating that we all been raised in. So just wanted to say that out loud, and much appreciation for y'all in creating this.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. I'm so glad you're here today and for naming all of that. We've experienced ourselves the angst around that others feel when we talk specifically about Black children, Black childcare providers, Black families in this past year or two. And we remain steadfast in we're here. It's so easy to be ignored. We are intentional about not lumping ourselves in with people, the term people of color, that is more comfortable for people who are not, and we are Black. We also, to the point around, and to the previous point also around how, in the chat, around how can we unlearn all of these white supremacist values. I also want us as Black people to unlearn our own anti-Blackness and to be very comfortable in being Black, speaking only for and about Black people, and that it's okay to do that. Everyone else is able to do that without folks being scared, without people being offended. And it's just when people hear Black or African American that they get angsty. And so that's another way we want to shift the work and the culture. We don't have a solution. In fact, with our own, I'll recognize her shortly, but with our own facilitator in helping develop our strategic plan, I want her to do a session with Black people for us to unpack our own anti-Blackness so that we can do this work even better. And that is another, I want to recognize to this whole audience, we recognize that even Black people can be anti-Black, even ourselves. When we think about solutions or the way we should do things, we can't help it because, again, it is so ingrained. We even bring forth anti-Blackness, and we have to work and do better on that.
I see a comment here. This is mind-blowing and so essential. Woohoo. Thank you, Black ECE, for all you do and mean to us. Thank you, Crystal. Any other comments? I see Joyce Robinson with her hand up.
Okay. I just have a question in terms of the focus of this. I'm delighted to hear about the workforce because every time that I hear things about the workforce now and how the early childhood workforce has not gotten the value or the attention, and it seems that both statewide and nationally. So I am delighted with that piece, but I'm also very much interested in what your strategic plan will be around Black children, because Black children in the early childhood environment are still being suspended, expelled, receiving, you know, inappropriate reactions from staff, both, you know, all staff, including Black educators. So I didn't hear that piece in there, and I wondered if you were going to do something, because this is also a passion of mine, is how we can create the workforce that can respond more positively to Black children and really see their value and worth and excellence.
You know, that is a very important issue that you've raised, Joyce. And I will start the answering off, but I'll turn it over to my co-founders if they'd like to add anything. But as we mentioned, ultimately our focus is we want to first build community. We want the voices of our community to be the ones to help influence and shape policy by sharing their stories. And so, as we mentioned in our strategic plan about bringing together organizations, the Black community, as well as providers, we can begin to address these issues with real qualitative experiences for our advocacy efforts, as Keisha mentioned, in terms of creating some systemic changes through policy, as well as through our advocacy. Anyone else like to add anything?
Yeah, I will just say that we actually, Ms. Robinson, have addressed the expulsion and suspension rates of Black children, particularly Black boys and Black girls. And that issue has been raised in several convenings with whether it's with California Department of Education or even within Child Development Social Services and other convenings. When some of my colleagues shared that they presented at workshops and other convenings, these are one of the issues that are brought up regularly. And there's specific members on our team who actually have addressed the issue as well. And it's something we look forward to continue addressing. And I will also put in our 10-point policy plan in just a bit, or someone from the team will grab it. But just know that some of us have even written articles on it myself related to the issue and what we could do about it. So it's a great point that's being raised.
I'll add that though it is not one of our milestones, what I think the hardest part of our strategic planning process and what we've come up with is it's an 18 to 24 month plan, and we couldn't allow ourselves to do everything. But in it, I'm reminded of a question and my response this morning. And I don't remember what the question was, but my response is, and it's related to what you just mentioned, especially around the workforce being able to treat our children well, and even our own Black workforce, is that we want to be very unapologetic in talking about Black children, Black families, Black childcare workers. We want to be unapologetic in naming them, even when that provides discomfort to others. But we, as Sam just mentioned, and right before we started opening up the floor, are also working on decolonizing our own minds, of getting rid of our own white supremacist values as co-founders of Black ECE, and getting rid of our own anti-Blackness. And we don't know how we're going to do that with all of our partners in the field, but we do know that we're starting with ourselves, and if by our own teachings and learnings and how we show up, hope that by sharing that and being that way, that it helps others to do the same. So that is not specific to addressing the suspensions and expulsions of very small little people, Black children. We have though, because there have been recent legislation passed and whatnot, which, well, I can't remember if we existed yet with a name that when we signed on in support, but we did support because, as Dr. Lawanda or Sam mentioned, one of our co-founders was a leader on that. issue.
I'm seeing so many wonderful comments in the chat. Does anyone else want to unmute themselves and engage in dialogue with us?
I love you all. I just wanted to unmute really fast and just send my love, my empowerment, my strength, my peace, my gratitude, my thankfulness, and to let you know, just to be here to see this progressing and happening. I'm
We
like,
lost you.
yay! So
Okay.
just know my passion and energy is real, and I just thank you for all you're doing behind the scenes. And
Oh, we lost you, but I love you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone for your kind words, thoughts, and ideas. Now on to how you can help. You can follow this link or point your camera if you have it handy on your phone at the QR code. You can fill out the brief form to select what interests you in terms of supporting our efforts. You can contribute by subscribing to our mailing list or simply by joining a campaign. There's actually something for everyone. And tomorrow is Giving Tuesday, but you don't have to wait till tomorrow to give to our worthy, newly minted 501c3 organization. Black ECE is in full fundraising mode and would appreciate any amount you can give, especially if you can make it a recurring monthly donation. So please help us launch our subscription boxes, begin hosting the cookouts, and generally get our organization off the ground.
I'm gonna keep it here for a second on the donation part, because I'm really proud that today we've raised about $450 between this morning and this evening. So that's just really exciting to us that people find value in giving whatever amount they can to help support our organization. Before we close, we did well, I don't know if you talked to me at all, I promised that we were keeping the brief in briefing. So making sure that this was a brief evening, especially as you all go and enjoy dinner or your families. But I want to recognize all of our co-founders. I'm so glad many of them are here this evening. And I'm just going to say everyone's name, even if you've met some of them. But Dr. Leah Austin, Justin Blakely, Dr. Carla Bryant, Patrick McFarlane, Maeva Mark, Dr. LaWanda Wesley, and Dr. Ashley Williams. We couldn't have gotten this far without them. We also could not have been here today without the support of the organizations we each work for in our day jobs, including the California Child Care Resource and Referral Network, the Child Care Resource Center, EdTrust West, Jumpstart, Cadango, and UC Berkeley Center for the Study of Child Care Employment. And also we're here because of generous funding from First 5 LA, which helped us develop our website, which is blackece.org, and the Heising Simons Foundation, which funded our ability to develop our strategic plan. And I'm really proud to announce that we have received super significant funding from the Tides Foundation in coordination with the Heising Simons Foundation, Tipping Point Community, Blue Shield of California Foundation, and California Community Foundation to support our racial wage gap campaign. And what most of that money is going to is, as I described, filling in that racial wage gap for the childcare provider advocates that we're able to recruit. I think I said everything that I was supposed to say, so.
I said I love being Black. I said I love being Black. I